Hello and welcome to another video. In this video, we'll be learning some new tips and tricks on formatting your graphs in Graph Builder. We've covered some of the basics as we've gone along, but now we'll go and pick up some of the other common but maybe overlooked nitty-gritty minutia. So we'll talk about how do we edit text on our graphs, specifically the titles and axes, and anything else that might be editable. How do we change our fonts and font sizes? How do we add annotations? And how can we edit our axes and reference lines and reference ranges? So to do that, we'll be using our baby dragon dataset again. So I'm going to open Graph Builder and I'm just going to make uh, a generic graph right now. So we're going to look at uh, type of dragon versus wingspan. And I haven't talked about it at all yet, but when you put things on axes, like notice four spaces light up on this axis. I can either replace the existing variable, I can put it above the variable, below the variable, or I can put it on the same uh, part of it. So there's some weird things you can do with that. Like if I want to sort down here, I can, instead of using overlay and the legend to split out things, I can directly split them out in the axis down here. Uh, for most of our cases, this isn't super handy, but there are times when this is pretty cool. All right, so I have my color and I'm going to have my wingspan there. Great. So, where should we start? Maybe I want to change the title of this. I can just click this axis and it'll let me change that title. What might be a better word than wingspan? I have literally nothing. Color, let's change this one. So name this type of dragon because that's been bothering me. Maybe I know this is going to end up somewhere and the figure caption might not appear. So I might call this wingspans of different dragons. Maybe just dragons. I can click on some of these elements to change them. There are limits though, so like I can change the title and the axes titles this way. I can't change um, these directly by clicking on them, but I do have options. I can also change this guy, I think. Oh, I can put a title here. Um, why don't I go back to Graph Builder? We'll put color on there as well. So I can make that dragon type. I really thought I could change the. Oh yeah, okay. So if I double click these, I can edit them as well. Uh, there's this item wrap as well. So let's say maybe I don't want all five of them. I want them to show up in three, so it'll go down three, three. You can change that. That can be useful if you have a lot of uh, items in your legend and there's some kind of sequence or logical grouping to them. You can wrap them. You can also change the direction that they wrap. Probably don't want to put that next to your thing. Can choose where the title goes, but you can change the font here. So all of the font options are buried in their specific menus, which is a little tedious, but you can hunt it down. You can change the type. You can change the size. You can add effects. You can only like do it binary though, so it'll apply it to the whole font box. You can do the same thing for our x-axis. So if I click here, I can change the labels here as well. I can't do this for continuous data, but I can do it for categorical data. Again, I can play with the font sizes. There's a lot of options on this screen, so you can choose um, the scaling. The scaling for categorical is weird. So this is value 0, as it says, value 1, value 2. So typically it overscans a little bit in each direction, so you have some white space on either side. You can play with this or play with it on the other screen if you need it. You don't need to play with tick bin increment. If we wanted to, like maybe we want to make this a little more exciting. So I want a color range here, and I want to go from negative zero point 0.5 to zero point 0.5. And this is going to be my copper dragon. So ranges just let you fill in that section in that dimension with color. So I'm going to add in the rest of these. I'm going to have a zero point 0.5 to 1.5. That'll be my gold. I'm leaving this. This is transparency. So 0% is completely transparent, 100% is completely opaque. 1.5 to 2.5 is going to be red. Oops, that is supposed to be range. If I put a label in here, notice that the label shows up on my axis. So you do want to be careful when adding labels to things. Uh, we'll have a video at the end of the series looking at spectroscopy data, and that's actually a really great place to use these reference labels. And then 2.5 to 3.5 will be our silver add. And now if I hit OK, boom. Now I have my copper, gold, red, silver. Alternatively, maybe I don't want those. You can just remove them. And instead, maybe I want to be concerned about any dragons whose wings are under 1 meter. So just going to put in a little danger zone up to 1 and see, okay, well, all these dragons are in need of love because they're sad. I don't necessarily need to have my axes go all the way down there. But there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with the ranges. So if you know, like, let's say you're looking at water quality data, you're looking at lead levels, you can color the bottom tolerance of lead green, and then above that, make it red for danger. Uh, all sorts of that thing. So let's just quick check based on where we are. We can edit text. We can change fonts. We've talked about axes, reference lines, ranges. So annotations. Annotations are pretty straightforward. If you're on PC, all your annotation tools are here. If you're on Mac, you have to go to tools. And these last 4 tools here let you place annotations on your map or on your graph. I almost exclusively only use annotate in line to add uh, significant annotations. But you can do other stuff. So maybe you want to put an arrow pointing to something. Again, that's such an ugly arrow. No way to make it look good, which is my beef with this. Um, and you want to label it. I'm going to use my shortcut key of T, and we're going to label this LOL for lots of love, obviously, because everyone loves the little baby white dragons. They're so cute and tiny compared to these giant other dragons. Lots of love for them. That's right. That's what that means. All right, and then I'm just going to click around a little bit. So you have these swap things which let you move uh, axes around. They're not that useful. You can remove. It is worth noting you on the y-axis you have different axis scales. So you can change your scale from linear to log. We probably won't use any of these other ones. Probably won't even use log, but depending on what you're showing, you might need it. Like a log scale would make our data look kind of weird because we don't have a lot of magnitude to our data. But if we had, say, lots of really big dragons and really small dragons, and we wanted to look at them all on the same set of axes, maybe, if we had a dragon with a 100-foot wingspan, it would not fit on this graph, um, whereas it would fit on a log graph. We can change the increment, so maybe instead of having the major increment happen every zero point 0.5, I want it to happen every 1. But I want more minor ticks to make up for that. So maybe I want 1, 0.25, 0.5, 0.75. I can turn on the grid if I want it. I don't ever want to see a grid on a graph. If you need some kind of to point out a line that's interesting, like use the reference line tool to add the line. So like maybe at 2.2 we consider you a young dragon. Oh, a young dragon instead of a baby dragon. Obviously this doesn't make sense because this would be per dragon. Like if white dragons are smaller, I bet young white dragons are smaller too. But again, we have font options for the label. We have font options for the axis. You can change the label orientation. This does affect both the annotation, the reference line label, and the axis label, but maybe I want angled labels. Maybe I want perpendicular labels. It'll make more sense with these ones since these are longer. So perpendicular side, all right, headset disconnected. Perpendicular is the side dimension. Parallel, angled. Angled can be nice if you have to put a lot of information on here and you still want it readable. I like angled. I do not like perpendicular at all. I despise it. Um, Horizontal's fine. Vertical is the same as perpendicular. So just keep the angled in mind. If you, for some reason, are having trouble getting all your labels on here, you can angle them. This, and I think those are it. Again, you can right-click markers or anything on your legend to change how it appears in the graph. You can right-click customize to change things on your graph as well. Uh, some things you can't change. So if you wrap uh, your data, you can't change the font on any of this uh, through these settings. For these, you have to change your default jump settings, which is probably a good thing to bring up. So if we go to preferences, you can play with your fonts down here. These are your default fonts that apply to everything. If you find yourself continually changing fonts to be particular sizes every single time you use jump, it's a good idea to just change these instead. Um, so the graph ones are big, like these are the ones you use the most. Font family. So, check this out if you're finding yourself changing graphs a lot. And again, this is the only way to change these. So if you need to make these bigger before you download your graph, then you have to go through this. Um, the only shortcoming, I mean, there are many shortcomings, but that is the most glaring shortcoming that I have encountered. Let's see. Uh, Points. So you can play with that like jitter stuff here too. Basically anything you find in Customize should show up in here. You can add from this menu. I don't like to add with this. You can just shift click to add it up there. Uh, we don't use hover labels. One other thing that's useful is you can copy different things. So if you go to edit, you can copy, if I click on the right spot, like the axis settings, and you can paste these onto another axis, which is very useful if you have like spectroscopy data with lots of measurements. I think the spectroscopy video will be very insightful, so check that out when you get a chance. Otherwise, I don't think there's much more I can say in terms of immediate things you can do in Graph Builder. Our next video will look at some things you can do outside of Graph Builder to format graphs better and make your life a little easier. Those are useful if you're using the same data set many times. So with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.